I did it again. Well, I didn't get too far into that introduction. All right. Well, now that you can hear me, I'm Paul Kagabine with the Garland County Library, and I'm here once again with Marsalis Weatherspoon, who, as I was saying, is the esteemed president of the local NAACP branch, which is Hot Springs branch number 6013. And this is episode 4 of his ongoing Perceptions of Color series, which is a monthly series that intends to both celebrate and educate about all facets of the African American experience. And today's episode is going to discuss the winter holidays of Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa from a Black perspective. And there's going to be a couple of special guests joining Mr. Weatherspoon this evening that he'll introduce here in a moment. But as always, we thank all of you live viewers. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to share those, and we'll ask those at the end of this broadcast. And if you want to share this now or after the fact, this video will be available to view the recording on both the library's Facebook and YouTube channels. So for now, I'm going to turn it over to you, Marsalis. Welcome back.
Yes, thank you, Paul. Thank you so much again. Welcome to Perceptions of Color. This is our 4th episode, and I'm beginning to lose count. We started in September, and now we're all the way into December, and we're just grateful for the distance we've gone thus far. And as he alluded to, today we're talking about a very special topic, which is holidays from a Black perspective. And I have some very special guests with me. We have Mr. Robin Washington, and he is the editor at large for Forward, and he is from Chicago, Illinois. He has a family of Black and Jewish civil rights activists. He participated in sit-ins and protests when he was 3 years old. He recalls it as a family outing. He's a journalist and a filmmaker, and he's gone on to chronicle the movement in his acclaimed PBS documentary, You Don't Have to Ride Jim Crow. We also have with us Miss Cicely Hicks. She's a native of Hot Springs, Arkansas. She's a graduate of Lakeside High. She completed her Bachelor of Science in Child and Family Studies at Baylor University, and she has worked in case management, social services, and mental health support with children and families in the states of California, Texas, and Arkansas. So Mr. Robinson is going to be sharing with us about Hanukkah today, and Ms. Hicks is going to be sharing with us about Kwanzaa. So I want to welcome at this time Mr. Robin Washington and Miss Cicely Hicks. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Marsalis.
Right. We're going to start ladies first with Kwanzaa. We're not necessarily in chronological order, which we'll talk about that in a minute. But Cicely Hicks, you grew up with Kwanzaa, correct, in your household?
I did. So actually, I was raised in the AME church. Both of my parents are of the Christian faith and of the Christian background. My father was raised as a Southern Baptist, and when he moved here to Hot Springs and met my mom, they both are now, members of Visitors Chapel AME Church. And so I was raised in the AME Church. I was raised in the Christian faith. But my mother, having studied African studies as her minor when she was in college at the University of Louisville, she always taught us about cultural traditions, about different people from all walks of life in general, not only who are relative to the African American experience, but different cultures and diversities nationally and internationally. And so it really was sparked by my mom as a child. She taught us about Kwanzaa. We had the Menorah, and she would put the candles out each day and talk to us about the principles. So that was probably one of my earliest experiences with Kwanzaa at home.
Awesome. So you got it tried and true. That sounds very interesting. I didn't have that experience, so I'm just so interested today to hear about Kwanzaa and then about Hanukkah. And Mr. Washington, you had a unique upbringing as well. You have a Jewish mother and a Black father. So just if you would paint a picture of that unique upbringing.
Right. So I would point out, by the way, that my mother was, both of them passed on of blessed memory. My mother was Jewish and not Black. My father was Black and not Jewish. I say that because you can be both. By every definition of Judaism and of Blackness, you or the one drop rule. My parentage makes me 100% of each, so you got 200% here. So, and the other, you got to add a few more percentages in there because our real religion or driving force in my household was indeed justice, i.e., manifested by the civil rights movement. Obviously, you're in Arkansas. I said a few things happened down there, but we had quite a few in Chicago too. And it was actually both of my parents, but my mother was an officer of CORE, Chicago CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, and of the NAACP. So, I'm home visiting there. By the way, I'm in Duluth, Minnesota, which is where I live today, and proud member of the local branch here too. So yes, I was actually taken to marches and sit-ins and protests when I was 3 years old. I don't know if Paul can bring it up, but don't take my word for it. We got a picture from there you go. This is in front of the Chicago Board of Education headquarters after we were thrown out from a week-long sit-in, which was one of the longest continuous sit-ins in the movement. And this was in July 1963. One reason you haven't heard about this, it was a failure. This board didn't, they agreed to some stuff and they backtracked on it. Paul, can you bring up the other one very quickly too? And I'll try to be brief on it. But it happened though right before the March on Washington. And if you could blow that up, it says stage sit-in in boardroom, and I don't know how big you can get it, but anyone who wants, I can send a link. I found this recently. Everything's on the web now, and it actually that yellow part there was a part where they talk about my brother and me at 6 years old, and it says that I ate cookies while my brother explained about de facto segregation. So we were steeped in the movement.
Definitely. And you said had past tense. I said have. I say have in Arkansas, and even in Chicago, we still have struggles even today.
Absolutely.
So, that's why we're here partly. And both of y'all, I have notes, but y'all are kind of taking me on another trajectory. When we start talking about the Congress on Racial Equality, I haven't heard that in so long, and that's one of the bedrock kind of institutions in the social justice journey. And then Cicely, you mentioned the African Methodist Church, which we know is the first Black church here in America that, we couldn't do so many things, but we were allowed, worship, and how that's been important. So, I'm kind of just throwing this stuff at you, but y'all can handle it, I'm sure. So just talk about the importance of these institutions and to not just with these holidays, but just the Black experience in general. Anybody, just jump in there.
Well, I'll start. I think Kwanzaa, speaking of some of those institutions that were for racial equality, and especially of the times that the civil rights movement was starting and was most active, that was the same environment that Kwanzaa was born out of. And so Kwanzaa was founded in California in 1966 by Dr. Karenga, and it was following the Watts riots. And so again, an environment of highly racially charged activities and emotions, and just a fight, like Mr. Washington was saying, a fight for social justice. And so it really was founded in order to give African Americans something to cling to that was founded in our African ancestry. And so during that time, like Mr. Washington was saying, and like you have said, so many things African Americans were not allowed to do and were not allowed equal access to. And so Kwanzaa and other kind of journeys toward connecting with our Blackness, as Mr. Washington said, is where the philosophy of Kwanzaa comes from.
Wonderful. Mr. Washington, anything to add?
Well, I would just actually pick up on the AME church, the Black church in general, and that includes Black synagogues, by the way, which is where so much of the movement, and by the way, the movement starts, let's get this straight, when the first person stepped off a boat unwillingly from Africa and got here. that person didn't want to be here under those conditions. Let's get that straight. So people are always wondering, well, did the movement start? Did it end? And as you pointed out, it goes on today. And so one of the few places of our own of refuge. I mean, look, I grew up Jewish, but I can tell you that St. Matthew's AME, now that I think about it, it was just St. Matthew's. We didn't care what the initial was in my neighborhood. And I can't tell you how many meetings we had there. I have a certificate in my mother's archives lauding her for her work by St. Matthew's. So, that's one of our churches. And because I'm telling you, and I'm thinking of the old St. Matthew's. They finally tore it down and built a new one. That old rickety church, I'm telling you, so many meetings happened there, which really changed the world. I mean, very briefly, just to give you a little lineage on it, the activities we did led to a fellow named Al Raby, who became a head of a group, one of the groups that my parents were involved in. And then he ended up becoming involved in King's movement in Chicago. Then later on, he became Harold Washington's campaign manager when Harold Washington became the first black mayor of Chicago. Harold Washington's Senate seat was state Senate seat was later occupied by a young man who I met at Harvard Law, when I was in New England, right? And he went on to become an Illinois U.S. senator. Who am I talking about?
President Obama.
Right. That's the lineage. Now, I'm not taking all the credit, but I'm saying that, and frankly, I'm sure we can draw a straight line also from Hot Springs to Obama, too. So the point is, these things are not in isolation, and they're, I know I'm off the topic of religion and holiday festivals, but seriously, those holiday festivals were, in our living room. We may have had a Hanukkah party, but I bet you, I'll let you know it was also a movement party.
Right. We're off track, but we're right on track because we're talking about the confluence of faith and the struggle and how we navigate all of this in this Black experience. So we're off what we're on. So good. So Miss Hicks, you touched a little bit on the story of Kwanzaa and how it got started. And could you speak on the significance? First of all, kind of what does the word Kwanzaa mean, and some of the traditions and some of the other things that go on during Kwanzaa?
So Kwanzaa and the principles are kind of derived from, like you said, a convergence of different ethnic groups and tribes and nationalities in the mother continent of Africa. And so it is a Swahili word. Many of the principles are taken from the Swahili language, which was a language of trading. So it was a language that many people in different African nations and beyond were able to communicate with each other. And so Kwanzaa literally means first fruits. And so it's just a celebration of family and community and of our culture. In the African culture, the first fruits of the harvest is something to be celebrated. It's something to be prayed for and prayed upon every year in order to have a successful harvest and to sustain the people. And so Kwanzaa, again, is a collection of 7 principles celebrated over December the 26th through January 1st. And so each day there are different principles to focus on surrounding unity and collective work and responsibility, basically just being my brother's keeper, around creativity, around cooperative economics. There are just different principles every day, faith and purpose. Those are some of the 7 principles. I think that's all of them.
One I love to say is Kujigalia. Thing to say, and that's self-determination.
Self-determination, right.
So that's, if I'm going to remember one of them, and then I also know Umoja, which is unity.
Unity.
So I know a little bit about Kwanzaa. So thank you for sharing that. Mr. Washington, that's the Kwanzaa kind of origin story. What's the story of Hanukkah?
So the story of Hanukkah, and I should have a date for you, but it's a few thousand years ago. And there are many stories of the Jews who got invaded by somebody and and God saved us, and let's eat. That's the short version. But in any case, it was some invaders who were actually not just invading, but saying that you should practice sort of the Greek influence, but not sort of. They said this is what you should be doing, and there was a rebellion led by a family, the Maccabees, and they won. And so now they were free to practice their religion again. The story, the miracle of Hanukkah is that the temple had been sacked. This was the sacred temple. If you go to Jerusalem today, the Western Wall is the wall of the temple, and it is highly revered. It had an eternal light, and to have that, you used oil at the time. Not sure they had candle makers, but they used oil for the eternal light. There was only enough oil to last for what would probably be one day, and until they could import more or make some or whatever it is that you did. And miraculously, that little bit of oil lasted for 8 days. And so today, or the 2,000 odd years since, we remember that as you can see, also the Festival of Light happening at the solstice is a good time for that. But we remember that miracle and what it stands for, freedom to practice our religion by lighting, people say a candle, but I would say a light each day. I have here my menorah, and that's the candelabra, which you can see it has, this one, by the way, is fancy. If it looks fancy, it is. It is done by a very famous artist of Judaica. I bought this when I was 10 years old with my paper route money. Every week I'd put down like $3 or something until finally I got enough. And so this is a little bit different than the ones you may see. It's an oil menorah, and each one of these little cups held by a lion there. You put oil in it, there's a wick, and you light one each night. And this one, actually a candle goes on this, and you use this, the shamus is called, to light the others. And so that's why it's so many things in Judaism, or a lot of religions are confusing. We say one thing and then we show you something else. Everybody says an 8-branch candelabra, then they got a 9th one, right? The 9th one is the one that you light the others with. And so that's basically what that is about. And you couldn't get a better symbol for the holiday. By the way, here's my Kinara. You see, it's been used. I got to find some candles in the next few days.
I couldn't find candles. That's why I don't have mine. I couldn't find candles.
I thought about that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm actually, by 2 sources, told that indeed Milena Ron Karenga was inspired by a menorah to designate the Kinara. I actually met him when we started a group called the Alliance of Black Jews. One of our members had already been in contact with him, and she brought us over to see him. And I'm writing about that this week in the forward. And the forward is www.forward.com.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And that's like literally the coolest thing I've ever seen, that menorah, because the back, it kind of looks like the Game of Thrones throne a little bit. And then this is really random, but where you put the oil, those look like the same little oil cups that you put the oil in for a Hammond organ. I don't know if you ever heard of a Hammond organ, but you put the Hammond oil in there, and it's actually a motor inside the organ. I don't know. I'm going off track, but that's how my mind works. So that's.
But somebody could have been, in all seriousness, inspired by that. You know, that's the we talk about oppression and overcoming and everything. But on the other hand, let's celebrate, human ingenuity and doing the right thing. And somebody could have looked at something like that and wondering, how do I solve this organ problem? And there you go.
Right. Who knows? And I did not know that you were a celebrant of Hanukkah either. So that's pretty dope.
Kwanzaa.
Kwanzaa, I'm sorry. Kwanzaa. So this is just coming full circle.
Well, let me jump on that very quickly, because when I was the editor of the Black paper in Boston, the Bay State Banner, It had nothing to do with that, but we published an annual Kwanzaa guide, and I think it was right before I met him, or right after, but whatever. There is an annual letter, which there should be out, I think, in the next couple of days, from Elena Karenga about Kwanzaa. And it was right after I met him. I got the letter, and it was just so cool because he described the holiday, as Ms. Hicks has, and he pointed out it is not religious, that all religions can practice it. And he named them. And he said Buddhists, he said animists, no religion, and he said Jews. And well, he knew what he was talking about because he just met a bunch of us. So you can absolutely practice it. I've joked that sometimes, and I should point this out, Hanukkah's on the Jewish calendar is lunar, so it came very early this year, right after Thanksgiving.
Right.
That's unusual. Usually it is a little bit later in December. Many times it's coincided with Kwanzaa. So there are times that not just me, other families have had both Menorah and Kinara lit at the same time.
That is so cool. And I just want to mention, when you talked about religion, that we weren't trying to be exclusionary today, that the Muslims, they don't really have a major holiday that they celebrate in the winter time. Usually their holidays fall in the spring and on down. So I wasn't trying to exclude them, but we have the main holidays of these other faiths. And so going back to Kwanzaa, Ms. Hicks, you have dealt with children and families throughout your career, as we mentioned, in various states, and just the importance of family as it relates to Kwanzaa, and how your mother passed it down to you, and now you're sharing some of those traditions with your own family. So talk about the importance of family as it relates to Kwanzaa.
So family as it relates to Kwanzaa, or any cultural celebration as it relates to the family unit, is important because it holds such a significance to the foundation of the family, to unity within the family. Bonds are forged through common beliefs and common values. And it also provides a scope of social expectations for the individuals within that family or within that culture. So it gives you, a set of guidelines to walk by. That is what the celebration of Kwanzaa does. If you look at each of the principles, it talks about self-determination. It talks about how you should interact with your community and within and amongst your family members. And so family is definitely a central and integral part of the celebration of Kwanzaa. Also, with that, children are an integral part of the celebration. So as you mentioned, how my mother, and with any family and with a lot of traditions and cultural practices, they're often passed down from the elders to the heirs of the tradition. And so on the official Kwanzaa website, where Dr. Karenga is the author of all the information there, he borrowed an excerpt from the last will and testament of Mary McCoy Bethune that states that we are both the heirs and the inheritance of our heritage and of our legacy. And so, excuse me, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. We are the custodians and the heirs of our legacy. So as the custodians, as parents, as my parents did, they passed on oral traditions, not just with Kwanzaa, but, traditions about who my great-grandfather was, or traditions about where the family might have come from. So oral histories are passed down, narratives are passed down. Values are passed down, and the views are passed down from the custodians of our legacy to the heirs, the children who are our future. And so it's our responsibility to pass that legacy down, and also to prepare our heirs so that they can pick up the torch, and so that they are prepared to preserve our legacy and to continue and to build upon the culture. And so family is an integral part, again, of the celebration, and the celebration has a significance to the family unit as well.
That was well stated. As you were talking, I was thinking, could it be safe to say that, that family unit and that tribal unit are kind of supreme, whereas here in, Western societies, we value individualism? Am I just kind of making that up?
I definitely think that like you said, in our ancestral heritage, definitely the family and the community is valued much more than the individual. So that's definitely a Western ideology. But within Kwanzaa, it does talk about self-determination. So that describes an individual's ability to work towards your own goals, to define your own self. It talks about in Kwanzaa our ability as a people to define ourselves and who we are and the practices that we carry on. But it also talks about the determination of us as a people and how, we must work together in order to be our most successful and in order to leave the world a more beautiful place than when we found it. So there are principles, or I guess foundations, definitely, that value community. The whole idea of Kwanzaa is about family, culture, and community. So nowhere in there does it say I, me. It definitely is all about community.
Right. And then Mr. Washington, I know community is probably also important in the Jewish world because, you don't want to get shunned from the Jewish community, right? Like I'm just going off of, what I've heard and how important is the community and family unit in the Jewish culture?
Well, again, I mean, there's so many similarities, things that echo, which make my two-ness a oneness because they're experiences that I have on both sides of my heritage and everything. I mean, unfortunately, you have to, acknowledge the negative and then and celebrate the positive that came out of it. Look, I mean, Jewish families have been broken up. The African American families certainly have been broken up.
Right.
I can't tell you in the diaspora of each how many times that things seemed like they were going okay. Somebody came in and did something bad to us, and frankly, well, anyway. So so obviously, family is very important. And I think I would elaborate on that just to say, even in fairly comfortable times, and I don't mean that everybody's comfortable now. It's a strange time, but compared to history, I mean, there's nobody banging on my door right now for either reason.
Mm-hmm.
But even in comfortable times, just the family of the holiday. One of the questions you had asked me before we prepared here or in preparation, was how important was Hanukkah. And Hanukkah is not one of the major Jewish holidays. The most important are the fall holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and Passover in the spring is very important. Hanukkah was actually kind of a minor holiday, but its juxtaposition at the same time around Christmas and solstice in the United States, there's no way a little Jewish kid is going to be going to school and everybody's got, Christmas Secret Santa or something and they can't participate, right? So it's kind of evolved that way. But you know what? It turned into something else. Then it became more of a family thing. Frankly, I do like the menorah every night. I mean, you got a menorah like that, you're going to light it. Okay. Yeah. But, my daughter is way grown. I have grandkids. They're halfway across the country. And of course, we do this to participate. But, when I'm with them, it's a big holiday. They think it's a big holiday, and it is. It is a family holiday. When they're not here, right with me, I have to admit there's some nights, oh, shoot, it's the fourth night. Forgot to light this menorah. But that's what I'm saying is turning negatives into positives. It's the story of human resilience of two cultures that know more about it than, not to take anything away from anybody else. Well, there's a lot of others who do too, but two who know an awful lot about it.
Very well said. And you talked about where those holidays fall on the calendar. So, Cicely, we know that you said you are a Christian, but you also celebrate Kwanzaa. So my question was, do you get Christmas gifts and Kwanzaa gifts? Like, do you double up? It might be all the more reason for me to start practicing if I get double the gifts.
So as we know, it's not about the gifts, right? Under the tree. It's not about the physical manifestation. But to answer your question, like I said, I am from the Christian faith. I was raised in the Christian faith. And even as a parent, I raise, my children in the Christian faith. So Kwanzaa is definitely something that we have added to our culture in our household. It is not something that has taken the place of something or negated something else or been in contradiction to something else. So to answer that, I will say this. Before we started practicing Kwanzaa, of course, it was Christmas trees and presents under the tree. And, for little kids especially, it's all about the gifts, even though we try to impart upon them the knowledge of the real reason for the holiday and for the celebration. So what we do now that we celebrate Kwanzaa is that we kind of break it up over all the days of Kwanzaa. And I try to correlate the gifts that they receive with the principles of the day. So it's oftentimes not a material or monetary or physical gift. It might be that we do something together as a family. We do a new experience that we've never tried before. With Kwanzaa, the emphasis is placed on handmade gifts as well, because that promotes creativity, and it also promotes, just the sense of giving that is important. And so we like to do things that are handmade. I'm a crafter anyway, and my kids love art. And so we do a lot of handmade things, a lot of art. That was one thing I was going to ask Paul if he could cue up for us. I did have a few images from, oh, that's not it. Hang on. If Paul can, I did have a few images from our blog. Last year we were in the house and on quarantine and on lockdown from COVID. And so we did a few art activities each day. Paul, I don't know if I'm going to be able to.
You might have
I'll need you to share that page again on this end. Or if you tell me the website, I can have that pulled up for you as well. I can do it on this end.
It says Habari Ghani, Happy Kwanzaa.
There we go.
I got it. Okay. So I'll just show you all, and going back to the principles for each day. December 26th is Umoja. This was just an art activity that I did with my kids, and then I juxtaposed it with the definition for Umoja, which means unity, to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. And so I would try, again, to probably have a movie night or a game night, something we can do together. Again, something maybe that we as a family hadn't tried before, even, a new food. My kids love to cook, so a new cooking experience or try a new recipe, anything.
Can you go back up for a second?
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to note that that's a foot, I'm guessing.
It is.
It also looks like the continent of Africa, too.
Right. That is the foot of one of my children. I don't remember which child right now, but they had a lot of fun. We just painted the bottoms of their feet and did a footprint on there. They had a lot of fun with that.
I want to do that now because I do the turkey hen for Thanksgiving now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is a whole new one. And there's actually a Kinara exercise that's similar. You paint your hand and you can make it, make your handprints, the candles in the Kinara. So there's different things, you can just Google or get on Pinterest. But that was one activity that I found that they really enjoyed. And again, this was done last winter when we had been stuck in the house for, 9 months. So not every day did we do an art activity. Self-determination. We talked about goal setting, and we talked about how, like you said, we can define ourselves, name ourselves. And I talked to my kids a lot about their names and where the origins of their names and, our heritage in general. And so we just talked about self-determination. We set some goals and we shared goals with each other and, tried to help each other be accountable towards those goals and to reach those goals over the last year. So it talks about you can do big, brave things. And that's the way I explain that to my children about self-determination. I keep referencing my children, but we also have shared these activities and we've educated the kids in our after school program to not only Kwanzaa, but also other cultural celebrations held by different and various groups all over the world. We focus on current events if there's something that has come up, and then of course historical events as well. Okay. And so we do that all throughout the year. This was another art activity, collective work and responsibility. So we did handprints and put them all together.
You mentioned your after school program. Can you talk a little bit more about the program and your organization?
Sure. So I am the founder, director of Raw Cycle Community Education and Restoration, and we are a program that seeks to educate the community about gardening and about sustainability. I mentioned gardening first because that's really the majority of what we do. So when I mentioned the after school program, we teach youth from the local community about gardening. Our program is primarily held at the Webb Center, but we do have other gardening locations here in Hot Springs. So we teach about gardening. We teach about how to grow your own food, harvest your own food, cook your own food. And we have a goal that we want to encourage not only the children and plant the seeds in the children to do this, but also to share with the families, so that hopefully families can not only produce and sustain for themselves, but also share with others and with our, with your neighbors in the community. And so we meet after school, not over the holiday breaks, of course, but then we also meet in the summertime and have various activities and outings, guest speakers, lots of things to try to expose the youth again to various cultures, current events, and then give them skills to sustain themselves when they're adults.
Awesome.
So let's see, day 3 for Kwanzaa is Ujima, and that is to build and maintain our community. That's the collective work and responsibility aspect of it. And you'll see another art project we did there. Ujamaa is to build our own businesses and control the economics of our community, to share in its wealth. And so that's our collective, our cooperative economics, I'm sorry. And so for that, I just featured a couple of pictures from different prominent Black establishments that were present in the United States, in Durham, North Carolina, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then our very own Hot Springs, Arkansas, Black Broadway there. And so the fifth day is Nia, and that is when you focus on purpose, our purpose as individuals and our collective purpose as a people. And so this quote by Maya Angelou: "If you have a purpose in which you can believe, there is no end to the amount of things you can accomplish." I'll scroll. I don't know that I have any other examples of artwork there, but that was Kuumba is creativity. And so that's what I was saying earlier about the handmade gifts. That is what's encouraged, to show creativity, to promote creativity, and to feature everyone's skills and talents in your gift giving. So not just run out to the big box store and get the hot item off the shelf, but really put some thought into not only gift giving, but also the gifts that you give and share with the world. And so on day 7, Imani is the principle that is practiced, and it's of course our faith. And so to believe in all our hearts with our Creator, our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. And so that was we featured that on our blog. We do keep a blog about our different activities, and there's lots of pictures on there, recipes, all kinds of activities, educational topics. And so you all are welcome to visit that at your leisure if you like.
And we'll make sure we get that link put out there.
Okay.
So that was awesome. That was really awesome. And at the end of there, I saw an Ankh, and I could go on a tributary about that for a while, but I'm not. I'm going to cut it short and let Mr. Washington share some of his traditions, because we heard Ms. Hicks share some of her traditions that she does with her children. What are some, things that you would see on a typical Hanukkah?
Well, there's I don't have one here. I suppose I should have someone. There's spinning the dreidel, but that's a little gambling game, if you will. It's it's like dice, only it comes as a top, and you spin it around, and it has a Hebrew letter on each of the sides, and whichever one it lands on, if it's your letter, you get the gelt. What is gelt? Gelt is you've heard of geltons in money, and that's what it is, but it's actually candy money. Usually, it's gold coins done up as candy. You can find that almost anywhere. So you introduce those two concepts to a preschooler, and they take to it right away. And then people have gotten creative with gelt. I gave some to my grandkids in a giant fortune cookie, which was mixing a bunch of cultures together, or a big giant gelt. They don't seem to make it anymore. It was like this big giant gold coin, about 12 inches across. There's certain foods that are particular to Hanukkah. There's latkes or potato pancakes, and donuts are another one. You know what? Someone can tell me about it. There's a gap in my knowledge. I'm not sure where that came from, jelly donuts, but that happens too. And then, yes, you combine it with you can keep pretty busy doing this, right? Between the dreidel, the gelt, the donuts, the latkes, and lighting the menorah. It's definitely a night of family activities, and you're doing it 8 times, so the kids won't forget that. But again, it's all telling them that there's more to it. And frankly, after I wrote a story once about a African American Jewish youngster, and it started out by saying, after a Christmas party at her daycare center, 8 days of Hanukkah, little Rachel Kronberg stood to make out like a bandit by the time Kwanzaa rolled along. I mean, and her parents were actually saying, okay, there's a little enough of this, And so, it's look, there's nothing better than the joy of a child receiving the gift, but you got to put it in perspective too. And yeah, the homemade stuff. I haven't said I've always done that, but that's something I truly believe in. That I think is a great aspect to what makes the Kwanzaa gift a little bit different.
Right. So I'm a music teacher, and so I've taught wind, I've taught strings, and I've taught voice and piano. And dreidel is one of the first songs we learn.
Forgot about that, right? We got all the songs that you sing for it too. So, yep, you got that right.
Yeah, you got to have dreidel. Awesome. So again, I was just so blessed and fortunate to find you, because I don't personally know any Black people that celebrate Hanukkah or that are Jewish, and so. Do we know how many Blacks there are that are practicing Judaism?
We have guesses and estimates. I mentioned how we, when we went out to visit Dr. Karenga, we had started a group called the Alliance of Black Jews, that we were pioneers. This was in the mid 1990s. I've been, again, practicing all my life and all. And I was in Boston at the time. There was a counterpart in LA who was also organizing Black Jews, and one in Chicago. We all heard about each other, and we started a national group. Didn't completely survive, but we kind of what's the word? It isn't intact as a working organization, but it spawned so much. And now today, I would challenge you, Marsalis. I think if you ask that question out loud, you'll find somebody in Hot Springs. Trust me.
Right.
Question. And so, in terms of numbers, at the time we started the alliance, you have people who, like myself, who are biracial from both backgrounds. You have people who obviously convert to Judaism, just as there's white people convert to Judaism, few of them, and Asian and whatever. And, so it's not just Black people, it's people of all different colors. Judaism doesn't know any color, who knows what the original Jews looked like. And I bet probably like me. And for many generations they did. But you're dealing with the people who went all over the world, and when you go around the world, things change. Your complexion changes, and it changes back again. There are African American congregations who, at the end of slavery, concluded they could not be the religion of the slaveholders and embraced Islam, which we know about, and also some embraced the form of Judaism. They were not recognized as having, or they did not actually have a formal conversion, which mainstream Judaism requires. So those groups are not necessarily, the word is halakhic, i.e. following the precepts that say how you become Jewish. But some of those groups have actually become halakhic. And I would, one of your questions was Black Hebrew Israelites, and that's basically a name you hear. But I have to warn you, there are many, many different groups who practice many, many different forms of religion. And so, just as we were saying, Black Christians are Black. Christians in general, there's so many denominations. So,
Right.
not all Black Hebrew Israelites are anywhere near the same. Some of them actually worship Jesus. That's something that has always been a part of them. Some you could not tell the difference between their practice and Orthodox Judaism, the strictness. So, so I just would say, I didn't mean severely warn, but just caution one not to make assumptions. But to accept, okay, you're practicing something. That's cool.
And this is what tonight is all about, showing that there's blacks that celebrate Judaism, but even within that, there's a gamut and there's an array and there's
Right.
diversity. So I think I just represent so much, just the three of us tonight. Even I'm Christian, but I'm a Pentecostal, So coming from Church of God in Christ background, and we could delve into that. But we're going to try to wrap this up. And just Cicely, if somebody's wanting to celebrate Kwanzaa, how do they get started? And just any closing thoughts on Kwanzaa tonight?
So I would encourage anyone along their spiritual, religious, personal journey. I do believe that it's an individual and personal journey. I don't feel like you arrive at a destination as long as you're living and breathing. We're seeking knowledge and seeking truth and seeking information. And once you learn that, then you're responsible for it. But I would say to anyone who wants to incorporate Kwanzaa or start practicing Kwanzaa, just do your research. Make sure that you understand the principles. Make sure that you understand how they align with where you are in life right now and maybe where you're trying to go, and make sure that there is an interconnectedness in a meaning, basically a purpose, a nia for what you're doing. From there, you can start to participate in the celebration of Kwanzaa, but really the most important thing is that you carry the principles with you in your daily walk, much like other religions, that you exemplify and exude those important values. And so that's where I would say do your research, do some soul searching, and make sure that that you're on your journey.
Awesome. And it sounds like a lot of what we've discussed today is compatible,
Absolutely.
The Judaism is compatible with the Kwanzaa, and sounds like some of the Judaism is compatible with the Christianity. I started to bring my tallit. I have a tallit that my church made a couple of years ago. I started to bring it, but I didn't. But Mr. Washington, any final thoughts on Black celebration of Kwanzaa, or just, excuse me.
Well, just to pick up, on what you said is that they all do inform each other, and sometimes they conflict with each other. One thing I would say about Kwanzaa, I can't see where it conflicts with anything. I've used it as when I was editorial page editor of a daily newspaper. I wrote about Kwanzaa, suggesting that our town's Chamber of Commerce should adopt the principles. Why not? I mean, tell me what's in there that doesn't apply to a Chamber of Commerce, right? Self-determination, yep, check. Ujama, check, very much so. That's what Chambers of Commerce are about. And so, obviously the holiday is to celebrate Blackness and Pan-Africanness, but, that's something that can be applied to everything. Religions, of course, have differences, so we can respect the differences. As I said, there's some of the Black Hebrew groups that, deify Jesus. That is certainly not what other Jewish groups would do, but, we can respect everybody. I mean, you don't have to accept it. You can respect it, though. And one more note, by the way, in your previous question about how many, we had estimated at the time there were about 200,000 Black Jews in the United States. By the way, there's Ethiopia, which has another large group, and many of them are in Israel now. But today, that number has been a little more professionally. Well, our number was pretty good. I'm not going to sell it short, but seriously, up to at least 12 to 20% of the Jewish population is of color in some way. So that's important. And that's something I would want to leave people with, is that when you see a picture of one of my Hasidic brothers, or sisters, and he's got the big hat and a black coat, that's cool. But that's not what all Jews look like. They look like everybody on this call.
Awesome. Well, I can see the little star in the sky the more you know. So this is
Definitely.
Easy to support us, right?
Yeah, this has been so enlightening today. But we didn't leave Christmas out, and we're gonna play a little game. This is maybe a tradition we'll start. This is called "What You Know About That." So I'm gonna put a picture up on the screen. I'm gonna let y'all just shout out if you recognize what I'm showing. If not, I'll just jump in. But this is we're gonna try this. This is what you know about that. So I'm gonna share my screen. Hopefully. Okay, y'all can see my screen. Okay, so what is this?
I can't
Actually, I
see.
don't see it yet. Yeah.
You
I
don't see
can't
my screen?
see. No.
Oh no. Oh, maybe I need to actually share my screen.
I am here for tech support.
Okay, now can you see my screen? Okay, so what do we have here?
Yes.
Now, yes. The preacher's wife.
Ding, 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 ding. So I try to think of some Christmas movies that are black, and when I looked at a couple of lists, and I didn't really know half of the movies on the list, but this is one definitely that everybody
Definitely
should
a classic, yeah.
It's got Whitney Houston, and it's got Denzel Washington. Definitely some star power in this movie. So it's a essential Black Christmas movie. Does anybody recognize this?
Well, it says what it is. So.
Right.
By
Right.
the way, I would have to say The Preacher's Wife, that still also looks like a Hallmark movie too.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Hallmark this year they had done a couple of attempts before, but they made a pretty good Hanukkah movie. And so and they finally have gotten some multicultural casting too. So
Right. So this is the Quincy Jones interpretation of Handel's Messiah. It was released in 1992, and it went on to win Contemporary Gospel Album of the Year. And so it's got Take Six, Tremaine Hawkins, Daryl Coley, just anybody that was who's who in gospel at the time was on this album. So it is groundbreaking. So I would encourage anybody, if you haven't heard it, go check out Quincy Jones, Handel's Messiah, A Soulful Celebration. So that's that. And it would be, okay, what about this? Anybody?
Oh yeah, watch night service now.
Yes.
Ma'am.
So we're full circle now because we talked about Watch Meet. We talked about AME. And so this is an AME Watch Meet service dating back to 1862. And so Watch Night or Watch Meet services are still very important to the Black community, seeing the new year in. And at that time, it was, the hope of emancipation is the import of it at that time. And so we still carry on that tradition. I'll be in Pine Bluff this year at the Watch Meet at First Trinity Church of God in Christ with Pastor Aaron Withers. So that is an AME Watch Meet. Anything to add, anybody? Okay, moving on. Okay, this is another album. Does anybody know this guy? Okay, I didn't think so. So this is one of my all-time favorite gospel artists and producers and composers and choir directors, James Hall. And so this came out, I want to say 1999. It's called A James Hall Christmas, and it was on cassette at that time. So this one, please go check it out. It's on all major platforms. It'll bless you. So A James Hall Christmas. What about this?
My mom already had hers out over the weekend when I was at her house getting them ready. Black eyed peas.
Yes. So I don't know if this is
Not the group.
this is not. I don't know. Well, it probably is black, but everybody's doing black eyed peas now. But you know, you gotta cook those black eyed peas for New Year's, or it just won't go right. Right.
Right.
So, that's that. Black eyed peas. This is so fun. Okay, does anybody recognize this?
We talked about this in my family group text the other day. Is that the bag of fruits and nuts
Yes. Yes.
that you get from Sunday school or church? Yeah, every Christmas.
So every Christmas you get a brown bag, and it's got
Mm-hmm.
an apple, an orange, some nuts, maybe some hard candy in it. And we still do that today. Every kid gets that brown bag of goodies, and it comes from, you know, at that time that's all you could afford was that bag of fruit and nuts, and you were happy to get that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we carry on that African American tradition today. So is there anything else? Oh, what's this? Somebody, anybody?
Well, it looks like a pretty good hand anyway.
Okay, so I don't. This isn't relegated to Christmas, but any black family gathering, somebody's playing spades somewhere.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna tell myself here that I still don't know how to play spades. It was.
What about bid whist?
Yeah, I don't know whist. I've heard of such things, but I'm not a person that uses those. But spades is a big part of family gatherings in general, and definitely during the Christmas holiday, somebody's going to whip out a deck and play spades, and then they're going to talk about you for not knowing how to play spades.
Mm-hmm. That's my mom, so don't play with her.
Right. So there's spade. I think that's it. Let's see. Oh, what's this? Really?
Well, it looks like gumbo, maybe. I don't know.
Close.
Okay, I'm gonna go with my Southern Arkansas heritage and say chitlins, although I do not eat those.
Ding, 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 ding. So
Yeah,
y'all,
I have been to many a hog slaughter. My grandparents were farmers, so I know all of it, and that's the reason why I don't eat them because I know where they come.
right. So y'all were both right. So these are chitterlings or chitlins, and these are Creole chitlins. So
Okay.
you see the seasoning and spice and everything.
Mhm.
So y'all were both right. It's Creole chitlins. And both sides of my family are from Louisiana. So I just automatically like hot stuff. So I think that's it. Oh, yeah, that's it. So that was fun. Thanks for playing. Yay. Unshare me, Paul. Okay. So that was awesome. I can't. It was so great. So I'm going to put it in the hands of Paul to see if we had any questions from the audience.
We did have a handful of questions and some very heartfelt comments. And first, Miss Hicks, that's a motion light in there, so
So don't
I
need
guess
to
you were
move
too
around.
still.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay.
You were too still. The same thing happened to Marsalis earlier. So I'm gonna give everyone that's watching live still an opportunity to get in a couple last minute questions. I did have a couple of my own, and I'll start with one for you, Marsalis.
Okay.
One topic I was hoping you could reflect on is the secular and commercial aspects of Christmas from a Black perspective. Like, what is the relationship with gift giving and Santa and all the other traditions?
Right. And, you know, Cicely kind of touched on it earlier. You know, it's about family. It's about togetherness. It's about the reason for the season, you know, which in the Christian tradition is the birth of Jesus, you know. And so we really place him in high esteem. But when it comes to shopping and gifts and all that. We're just like any other community. We go out and go to the big box stores, or we make our stuff. We're just like any other group. But since you touched on that, there's been some recent movement to really harness the power of the Black dollar when it comes to politics, or when it comes to social justice, because a lot of businesses depend on the Black dollar. And if we show solidarity in not going into the marketplace, we can make a statement sometimes. So you've seen some movement in that regard in recent years, and somebody else can jump in with any of that. Mr. Washington or Miss Cicely.
Well, as I was saying about UJAMA, right? Cooperative economics. In Boston, by the way, we had a place called the UJAMA Mart, which was, everybody was there. It was cooperative economics. And it was helping for teaching a word too. But go back to what I said about writing an editorial for the Duluth, Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, suggesting, what was I saying? Yes, I'm borrowing something from the Black community in Kwanzaa principle, but it tells the power, seriously, a smaller town like Duluth, Minnesota, or Hot Springs, Arkansas, I would bet it makes a big difference if you buy stuff from Hot Springs.
Absolutely.
Versus, even going down to Little Rock, let alone, well, Little Rock, you got Walmart. So at least Walmart is kind of local. It's not Benton or whatever. But anyway, my Arkansas geography is messing me up here. But the point is, let me put it this way. You want me to go to Walmart because I'm helping your state. But seriously, going to Walmart is not necessarily helping your particular group. So
correct.
That's a powerful statement.
So yeah, to answer your question in short, if we can keep the Black dollar within the Black community, that's something that helps us as a community, and that goes back to our self-determination.
Well, I just want to say one thing about that, though, because again, for everybody, it's not so much keep it in the community that we're keeping it away from somebody else. I'm not worried about Walmart; they're going to be okay.
Right.
But I am worried about my brother or sister who's got this small stand here. Who, if I don't shop there, who's going to shop there?
Exactly.
And they've got something that's really good that if they could get a base, they could eventually sell the product to Walmart, So, but it doesn't help if I go, seriously, I've got the dilemma right now. Where do I get my Kwanzaa candles? In Duluth.
Exactly.
I got a feeling they're going to be at Target. Okay, at least as a Minnesota store, but Minnesota based. But seriously, we had a Black shop in town. We don't have a large Black community, so I'm not so sure. I bought a Menorah for my grandkids, and it was online and sent it to them. But I know that wouldn't come in time. I should have bought candles at the same time for me. So
I agree 100%.
So on that topic, question for Mr. Washington and Ms. Hicks, would you say there's been any Christmas-like trend towards commercialization of Hanukkah and Kwanzaa? And if so, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's both. On the one hand, it's great. The Hallmark, I mentioned their movies, right? They got Kwanzaa cards galore. Go back a few presidents, and President Bush, the second one, was giving great Kwanzaa greetings and all kinds of stuff. It's mainstream, Right. On the other hand, and, there's no end of Hanukkah stuff. On the other hand, what's important, as we're saying over and over again here, is the message. So, yeah, some of the Hallmark cards are great. They're giving the message out to people who hadn't heard it. On the other hand, not doing that much for you, Jama.
Cicely?
I just echo what you all have said. Just want to, definitely keep the focus on the principles and on the ideals and on the connection to our heritage and trying to strengthen and solidify that. And so any other, practices, I guess, or perspectives can be in addition to, but definitely don't want to distract from the idea of the holiday.
Keep the main thing the main thing.
That's it.
Awesome.
All right, moving on to the viewer questions here. We have a question from Charlie, who first says, good program, Marsalis. Any comments about Black holiday music and thoughts on early 20th century holiday collaboration of Black and whites in music circles?
Okay, so I started to come up with a playlist of like Black Christmas holiday stuff, but there's several. That's kind of reinventing the wheel. There are several anthologies already out there, so I would just encourage that, Charlie, if you would just type in Black Christmas anthology, and several things will pop up. And we know, how. Um, Black music has influenced rock. It has influenced pop. It's influenced all these other genres. So kind of that has already been well. I don't think I can add anything more to that conversation, but yeah, just Google that, and several compilations will already pop up.
Can I add to that very briefly? You got to hear Duke Ellington's Nutcracker. He did the whole thing. It's total jazz. It's great.
Question from Ramona, who says, I didn't realize Hanukkah wasn't a major holiday originally, but that makes sense. Pardon me if this is a naive question, but why is a holiday sometimes spelled with a C and sometimes an H?
Because it's actually Hanukkah, and so they're transliterations of the Hebrew, and different people have different ways of transliterating it. Frankly, as an editor, it does drive me a little bit nuts because I'll see one, I'll see another. Speaking of cards, so somebody a few years ago, and I don't know if it originated in the card, came up with one that said Chappie Chanukah. So that's gotten to be a routine for my daughter and me.
And Hanukkah has been kicking my butt in terms of the spelling. Having to like do correspondence with this, and I still don't think I've got it right. Is it Hanukkah?
Yeah, double K, one N. It's basic. That's the AP style. Going back to being an editor, but don't forget we got Kwanzaa. Oh yeah, no, I should have said that. There are people who, myself included, who have celebrated Kwanzaa, which is a combination of Hanukkah and Kwanzaa. We had an article about it in the foreword. The foreword, by the way, is 125 years old this spring. It started as the Yiddish Daily Foreword. It is the oldest, obviously, and continuously published, now online. We still have a Yiddish version, believe it or not, online. You can see online Yiddish. I don't write for that, although some of my stuff might be translated. But so yes, we had an article a couple weeks ago about a Kwanzaa celebration. Then some people have done Christmas Hanukkah Kwanzaa and don't even bother to spell that any way you want. So
that's like the turducken of holidays.
But the Christmas Hanukkah Kwanzaa is being a little more silly, comical. Kwanzaa is a real thing.
Got a Kwanzaa question. Alicia asked, has adherence to Kwanzaa spread outside of the U.S.?
Yeah, so Kwanzaa is celebrated in the United States and in many places where there are not African Americans, Pan-Africans, members of the African diaspora, we are called, or just really anyone who celebrates African or African American culture. So it's celebrated in the United States, it's celebrated in Canada, it's celebrated in our Latin American countries in South America, and different various places all over the world wherever there are establishments of, again, people that belong to the African diaspora. So again, it's a cultural celebration of African people, African American heritage and descent, and so therefore anyone belonging to that culture or celebrating the culture with us celebrates Kwanzaa.
We had some kind comments here as well. Charlie, well, I guess this is a question too. Is Cicely active in Hot Springs? She's a great example of the do right principle.
Wow, thank you. I try to be active in Hot Springs. I am a volunteer on several.
Uh-oh. She's freezing. Where'd she go?
Good question.
Well, I can speak for her. She is a very dedicated worker. Her and her husband are both members of the Hot Springs branch of the NAACP. Ooh. They also have the Raw Cycle program where they teach kids about gardening, and there she is.
Sorry, lost you there. So I do try to be active. I've always, again, going back to my parents, both of them were active in service within our church and in our community. My mom had led a career of service in Hot Springs and in Texas. She's now retired. And so I was raised with that ideology and always with that value. And so I've just carried it with me. I've always been an avid volunteer wherever I've been in college. And since I've been back here in Hot Springs as well. So as Marsalis was saying, I'm a member of the NAACP. I'm a member of the Web Center, the Web Community Center Board, and several other organizations and groups here in Hot Springs. But of course, one of my loves and my passions is gardening and sharing those skills with youth. And so we do that through our program again, and through also a partnership with the local schools and the Master Gardeners here.
Right. I met Cicely at Garland County Community Coffee, which is a time where all of the area agencies and nonprofits get together and just share information and resources. And so she definitely is no stranger to service in this community. So she's just an asset and a blessing to us here in Hot Springs.
Thank you.
Shout outs to Woody, who says great information. Friend of the library, Cheryl Batts, who says thank you for the program, Marsalis, and says Preacher's Wife is a great movie.
Yes.
Esther Dixon, thank you, host and panel, for sharing. Awesome job. Very informative discussion.
Wonderful.
And I agree.
Folks.
This has been another wonderful episode. So thank you very much, Marsalis.
Yes.
And let's give each of your guests here an opportunity. Oh, go ahead.
Paul, I just sent you, unless I can share it myself, a picture of my dear friends McKinney family celebrating Hanukkah and Kwanzaa at the same time. They have a Menorah and a Menorah. That was a Kwanzaa celebration. I think this was back in the night. There you go.
Wow.
That is awesome.
Yep. Unfortunately, they just lost their father yesterday.
Sorry to hear that.
And he has on the yarmulke right here.
They both do, yeah, right.
Okay.
Well, actually, all three of them do. And Shahana is the daughter. Adam, Shahana, Daniel. Never mind. Okay. All the McKinneys.
Don't get in trouble. Yeah.
So, Miss Cicely Hicks, you just had an opportunity to talk about some of the things you did, but is there anything else you'd like to share or tell anyone about what you do or where they can contact your organization?
No, nothing else really to share about Kwanzaa. I really am appreciative about the opportunity to be here and to share. Very nice learning about and hearing from Mr. Washington as well. I feel like he could have covered both topics on his own, but a pleasure to be amongst good company. As I stated, I am the founder and director of Raw Cycle Community Education and Restoration. And just, we're an organization that I told you about that promotes self-sustainability, that promotes community service, and that we do all of those things through various ways, education and activities in the community. And so if you need to contact us, you can visit our website, www.rawcycle.com. That is RAPSYCHLE.com, and we may be able to put it in the comments or something like that. But I am here as a servant to the community, and so I would be glad to do whatever I can. So thank you for having me.
Mr. Robert in Washington.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Ms. Hicks. No, I couldn't do it without you. You're on the ground, you're doing it, and it's great to just celebrate with you, really. And thank you, Marsalis. Thank you, Paul. This has been just a joy to be a part of this. And, that's what the season is all about. We're finding the joy. And today's the solstice. Light is coming back. So let's find the candles and get ourselves lit
Get ready.
coming up this weekend.
My heart is so full right now. So thank you guys for being here tonight. This was just awesome. Mr. Washington, you're in Chicago, is that correct? Or
I'm in
you're in Duluth. You're in
Minnesota.
Duluth.
Right.
Okay. Good. Is it Central there?
Yeah.
Okay, we're in Central Time. So thank you so much for being with us tonight, all the way from Duluth, Minnesota. And we'll be in touch going forward. And I'm going to get my forward subscription. And thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you. It's been fun.
And Cicely, we're here in town. I'll see you at the Web Center, I'm sure, around.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me, though. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank both of you guys for being here on tonight. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you.
Marsalis, before we go, our next date for episode 5 of Perceptions of Color, we have Tuesday, January 18th. Are you ready to reveal the topic for January yet?
I am. January, we're going to be looking at the life of Martin Luther King, and I'm calling it King in Context because so often we know that he said the I have a dream speech, but there's so much more than that one speech, and sometimes we even pull quotes out of there out of context. So we want to put his work and his words in the proper context. So it's going to be King in Context in the month of January. So I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. And any final remarks you'd like to share? Anything else?
January we're hitting the ground running again. Hot Springs branch of the NAACP. We meet every second Saturday at 2 p.m. On the 15th, we're going to be celebrating the Martin Luther King holiday weekend, and so we will be virtual with our annual prayer breakfast, and that will be Saturday, January the 15th at 8:30 p.m. And so we'll be sharing more information about that as the time approaches. But if you want any information about the Hot Springs branch of the NAACP, you can go to our website, NAACPHS6013.org. NAACPHS6013.org. And again, as always, thank you to the Garland County Library for their partnership and support. And special thanks to Mr. Paul.
Of course. And thank you, audience, for watching. And if you tuned in late, please, you can go back and watch the beginning of the video. You missed a great presentation if you tuned in halfway through. This program is available on the library's Facebook and YouTube channel, and it is just share it around. We've had people from all over the country that have tuned into these videos, so that's one of the silver linings of virtual programming. And tune in, like Marcella said, January 18th for episode 5 of hopefully an infinite number of episodes of Perceptions of Color.
This was the best one yet, hands down. I just have to say thank you guys. Y'all were phenomenal, knowledgeable, and just awesome. So thank you so much for being with us tonight. Everybody have a great evening. Take care.